and I wasn't sure what Jeanie had in mind. A lot of times I just like to, tell people about how I get into, situations to get storms. And I don't know if you're interested in trying to figure out exactly where to go and how to get into position to
Yes.
storm.
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm into. So I think you're looking at my intro screen here. That's me. And that's me in the bomb cyclone last year, March 13th, 2019. I love storms. I love all kinds of storms, winter storms, particularly thunderstorms. That's my favorite thing. This is the time of year where I really get excited, and I'm hoping that things kind of get back to normal as far as the virus is concerned here before too long, because storm season is here. Obviously, Mother Nature still likes to throw in a couple of Arctic curveballs every once in a while, and that's what we've been getting now, which can be beautiful. I mean, I spent the entire day up in the Boulder County foothills, and it was just beautiful up there. I didn't have opportunity to take any still pictures. The light was really flat up there anyways, but I was, as working for 9 News, I'm usually, when I say photographer, I'm videographer first and still photographer second. So, but I love them both, and they both are different as far as storms go. So I'll just introduce myself. Basically, I'm a Colorado kid. I was born in Fountain, went to Manitou Springs High School, graduated in 1992. I went to Mesa State College out in Grand Junction to get my degree in communications. Started working at the local TV station out there just to make a little bread, and kind of had something to do with my studies. And so I had no idea that I would be still doing that 25 years later, but here I am still doing the local news. And obviously things have changed a lot along the time. You see, I'm a meteorologist now. So about 14, 15 years ago, when I really realized my love for storms, particularly thunderstorms, I was working out in Kansas. I was working for a TV station out in Wichita, and I realized that really the first time I saw the first Kansas supercell come marching across the plains there in western Kansas, I fell in love immediately. Told myself that I have to see more of this, and in fact I wanted to see it all. So I went back to school, and about 10 years ago I completed my meteorology degree doing the distance learning program at Mississippi State University, which is really good. A lot of TV people do that because you can still work wherever you're at. Wichita, Orlando, where I spent a lot of time. So I was able to get my meteorology degree, and so what I've become is this slash. You can see a lot of slashes in my little card here, because I'm a meteorologist, I'm a storm chaser, I'm a journalist, and first and foremost, I'm a photographer. That's kind of how I broke into the business. So that really describes me to a nutshell. But slash, a lot of people just call me slash because Kathy calls me a utility meteorologist. I'm kind of like the middle infielder of the weather business. So it gets me into a lot of cool scenes. So right about this time of year, middle of April, is when things really start to get going in our area as far as severe weather. And I like to be on it all. I would be on every single storm, no matter how big it is, no matter what it looks like, what's expected of it. I would be on every single storm if that was possible. And it used to be, I used to actually kind of get paid to be a storm chaser and a photographer, but our business is kind of condensed a little bit. And so I've had to become, a little, basically I have to contribute to the newscast every day. So I've also become kind of a storyteller, where I kind of have to tell stories about what's going on with science and the atmosphere, and really just even outdoor stuff in Colorado. So I've kind of become a lot of different things. So what I've got myself into is a lot of storms. You know, a lot. Here's me. This is me in my essence right here. This is really what I like. I don't know if the sound.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. You kind of get the idea there. It's this is really what I love. I mean, sometimes as a photographer and a videographer, my subject is myself, because a lot of times I have to use my body as a prop. You know, let me turn that down. So you know, it's like people always ask me why do they send you out in these storms and you stand there in these terrible elements? But for one thing, I love it. That's my element right there. I would volunteer to do that. They wouldn't have to pay me. Don't tell them that, but I really would. This is really what I love, and really what storm chasers and storm severe weather journalists, they kind of have to use their body as a prop, because that is really, you know, if you remove me from this scene and you see, you know, you see a little snow blowing around back there and a couple of signs and things shaking a little bit, you don't really get a feel for it. But everybody knows what a human body is. Everybody knows what their body is. You know what it feels like when you get a little bit of a wind gust. You really know. And when you see me standing there in the elements, you can really get a feel for what, you know, what is happening out there. And so I've stood in this was this year around Thanksgiving, when we had a big wind event after a big snowstorm there right before Thanksgiving. I've stood in hurricanes, severe thunderstorms. It doesn't matter. I really like the wind. Wind is one of those things that I just love. But this is my favorite thing. Now this is what I love the most. Tornadoes. This is a Colorado tornado that you know, this is a time lapse of just some sped up video that I took. And a lot of times when I'm out chasing these things, my priority is to the news, and so mainly I do a lot of videography of tornadoes. And on this particular tornado, this was out in Kiowa County, out by Eads a couple years ago. And this is really probably, I mean, this is really just a classic tornado. It's kind of one of the bigger Colorado tornadoes I've seen in a little while. But you know, it's so different too. I did get a few stills of this thing. This camera that I'm using right here is my news camera. It's got basically a 250 millimeter lens on it, and so I can zoom in quite a ways. I was probably a good 1.5 miles away from this tornado here, and I can really zoom in and capture this. And tornadoes, I think, are really spectacular in time lapse. Now, I couldn't find you can actually see some satellite tornadoes here coming around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's really, this one was a really amazing one. And you know, I had a 200 mil. I have a Nikon, so I use just a prosumer Nikon D3300. It's just, you know, it's not a pro camera and it's not an entry level camera, but it's like one of those $500 cameras. And I do have a 200 meter lens on it. And after I called the news department, tried to get on air with this thing, the signal wasn't good enough at this one to get me on TV. And so I had a moment to kind of you know, I was talking to the National Weather Service about what was going on, how far it was from the town of Eads, which, you know, was just to the northeast of Eads. So by the time I got, you know, a really good time lapse going here with my video camera, I did break out my Nikon and started shooting some stills with my 200 millimeter lens. And I was looking for them, I couldn't find them. But it's amazing how less dramatic and interesting a tornado like this looks on still compared to the video that I shot. You can see there's a lot of issues with it. You can see all this bright. This is what we call a rear flank downdraft, where the air is coming down back around the storm, and you see that really bright color up here. That also came out in my still shots. I got this really bright contrast here. So if you really, you set your iris to get the best detail of this circulation down here, the tightest part of the tornado, you kind of overexpose. And unfortunately, I couldn't get this tight with my Nikon. That might have been a little better of a shot. This was basically the shot I had with my 200 millimeter Nikon lens, and I got this bright, that brightness there. Let me see if I can back that up and pause it. So this is basically what my still looked like. You can see some great detail here, and the tornado is certainly visible there, touching the ground. But you always have this situation with thunderstorms where there's a lot of backlighting, there's a lot of side lighting, the sun is creeping through from the west usually, and you have some darkness behind. It's my dream, and to get the perfect tornado angle where you have basically the sunlight almost at your back, and the entire background is dark with only the tornado kind of lit up. And it takes just positioning basically. And I was actually going to show you how I get myself into positions like that. First of all, this is an example that I kind of wanted to show you of how I get into position. This is real-time video right here, not sped up, of a supercell thunderstorm that was last Memorial Day out in Imperial. So this is out near Imperial, Nebraska, and this is real-time video. This supercell here is this is really what I love and what I look for. You can see these striations in here, and this is just the lowering. The actual thunderstorm is much more massive than this. You can kind of get scale here. This ranch back here, there's a ranch house you can kind of see back here. That was a pretty substantial size ranch house, so you can kind of get the scale. You can kind of see this the inflow coming into this storm. There's actually two inflows to this storm, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to spin so high. But this inflow was coming in here, and then out on the other side there was a lot of air, warm, moist air coming in, feeding the storm. And then right here in the front of the storm on the bottom, you can kind of see these kind of more jagged and rigid clouds here, as opposed to the smooth ones that are up on top. And that's the cold air coming out of the front of the thunderstorm. This is basically coming straight at me at this point. So the cold air is coming out here, and you can kind of see the grass is kind of being, the wind was really strong to my back, meaning that there was air coming in and kind of meeting right up at this point right here. And you can kind of see all these cars. Every single one of these cars that you see driving by here was a storm chaser. There was probably about 50 or 60 storm chasers out on this storm. But to get into this position, I actually have to, I picked this storm up over by Holyoke in eastern Colorado. I had to do a real quick live report on TV. You can kind of see as this gets a little bit closer, you can see a little bit more of the definition of the air coming out of here. But I had to do a quick report on TV. So this storm actually passed me up. And so I was on the west side of it. And to get back into this position after I did my report, I had to drive through this thing like these guys are. You can kind of see them coming down here. I think there was mostly golf ball size hail that I encountered, but I know this thing was putting down baseballs, at least baseballs. Fortunately, when I was coming through here, I didn't encounter that. But
so when you were, can I ask a question? When you were standing here, you were not in rain. Is that true at this point?
Right. Yeah. At this point, it's completely dry where I'm at.
Okay. And there was a question in the previous video, there was a question from someone asking if it was raining while you did it, and I'm guessing not.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I can't see the chat.
I know. Sorry about that.
Yeah, just if you get one, go ahead and
Okay.
let me know. But yeah, neither one I was in any rain. There was
Okay.
with this one there was lightning strikes out in front of this storm. So they're really the only thing that I was encountering was some strong inflow wind at my back at like 15 miles per hour, and then a few lightning strikes off in the distance. And you can kind of see I probably got here another couple minutes before it's time
Yeah, it's looking a little dark.
to get out of its way.
So are you in your car at this point, or are you outside of your car?
No, I'm outside of my car,
Okay.
just standing right along this field here. And I also had a time lapse running on my dash cam that was in my truck that's kind of just off to the left and behind me.
Okay.
So that was able to see a little bit more of that at that storm. But right about this point is, you know, what you can kind of see under here. This storm did have a tornado warning on it. Never did produce a tornado, but it was just, it really just couldn't, it was too big almost to really produce a tornado. It was producing mostly baseball sized hail. You can kind of see this glow back here. That's the hail core. It's kind of,
wow.
and here's the time lapse of that shot that I did. So so positioning is really everything, and that's why, you know, storm chasers are, you know, you don't really chase the storm. The storm is usually chasing you, and so you've kind of always got to have a plan to stay out in front of it and kind of to the bottom of it, which is the best positioning to have it in. So I have so here's a radar image of that storm. And this is an app. This is the only paid app that I have on my phone. It's called Radar Scope, and it really has great radar detail. It's a $10 one-time download, and it gives you this really great radar information here. But when you're looking at a storm here, I'll kind of lay the land here for you. This is the town of Imperial. All these little red dots are storm chasers that have their beacons on. This is me right here in the blue circle here. And you can kind of see this vector showing you where the storm is headed. So when I was shooting that video, I was right here, and the storm was kind of moving just to my north. But I mean, obviously, this part of the storm was going to impact me. So when storm chasers are looking for the best photographs of a storm, there's two things. One is proximity. You kind of have to be like they were saying, was it raining where I was at? You kind of stayed just, for me, I stayed just outside of the rain. You can kind of see these reflections here on the radar. A little bit of the green is kind of the lighter rain. So this is about a mile from the storm, about a mile and a half. So that's kind of the range that I like to stay in, so that if there was some really amazing storm structure on the outside of the storm, which, you know, those striations that you saw in that is, which would be kind of like right around the front of this storm right here. I want to be able to see that and get into position to shoot that. But if there's a tornado or a funnel cloud or a lowering that's really rotating, that's what I really like to photograph as well. And that's going to be in here a little bit tighter to kind of where this circulation vector is. And so when storm chasers are trying to get into that great position, we're looking for these notches in the radar, and that's an indication that there is air, the inflow coming into this storm. So we call it it's a rain-free base. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, you didn't see any rain around me there and with the other tornado. And that's because usually where that rain-free area is where the most interesting part of the thunderstorm is going to be, where there is going to be a lowering of some sort, any type of rotation, a funnel, or tornado, that's going to be right in here. And there was a tornado warning on this storm just before this radar image. This inflow was a little bit more defined, and these apps can give you amazing detail.
So there was a question about the app, whether north was literally straight up.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's a good question too, because when this storm, you can kind of see this storm vector here. This is pointing to the northeast, and I would say 75% of the storms that are in our area, Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, are going to be moving from southwest to northeast. And the best positioning for you to be is to the south of a east moving storm, because you can see all this dirty reflection up here. Like this guy right here,
Oh, right.
he would have no idea that there is an amazing, beautiful scene happening over here, because he's looking through these magentas and purples and pinks. Those are all large hail. And, he's looking through this rain, and he's looking through this hail, and he's not able to see any of this amazing beauty that's happening over here. Really, we kind of got lucky with this storm. You can kind of see this road. This is the road that kind of comes out of, from Holyoke to Imperial. And this is what I drove through. You can kind of see these storm chasers, these little beacons here, these red marks coming through the storm right there. So when I came through, I drove down this road, got out in front of it, and found a position to shoot it. And ideally, if there's a good road network, which there almost never is out on the Eastern Plains, but you'd want to kind of stay to the bottom of this storm if it's moving to the east, and kind of keep an eye on it and look for your opportunity to get out in front of it. And then you can kind of come back down to the road and kind of stay out in front of it and to the bottom of it.
Okay.
Was there another question?
Nope, that's it.
Yeah, so they're not always moving to the east. In Colorado, we'll get depending on the positioning of the low pressure of the storm. Sometimes we'll get them moving to the north or to the south, but the idea is to kind of stay to the back of it and to the left. So if the storm was moving to the north, or to the right. So if the storm was moving to the north, I'd want to stay to the east, southeast of it. And if it was moving to the south from the north, I'd want to stay on the northwest side of it. So that's the cleaner area, so that you can always kind of keep an eye on just the amazing things that you can kind of see. This was kind of later, so you can kind of see the time here. It's 8:54. Which I think I might have been in the eastern or the central time zone at that time. I think it's right around the time switch there, but we're way beyond our newscast. So after the 6 o'clock news, I'm really free at that point. So I was able to get a really good time lapse of this. I was really able to pay attention to it. I got a lot of stills. Here's a still shot that I got.
Before you do that, there was one more question about the app. Sorry, there was a question, does it have a road overlay?
No, that is one thing that's tough. It does have some of the major roads, like I think this is Highway 34 that comes out of Colorado towards Imperial, I think it is. But it has some of the main roads, but they're not marked. You can kind of see that little marking. So a lot of times, if I don't know the roads, like I'm not in southwestern Kansas or Nebraska that much, and I don't know the roads that well, so I'm flipping back and forth in my apps between Radar Scope and Google Maps. That's really the best storm chasers. Really are not highly meteorological trained, or they don't really know these amazing details about the specifics of weather. They're really just good navigators, honestly, because they always know how to stay ahead of the storm and how to get into position to see these amazing things. So I was able to get This was one of the shots that I got with my Nikon. It was really close to me, and I think this might have been 4 images kind of stitched together here with my 55mm lens. I kind of just so I can get a little bit more of it. I think I got another one where you can kind of see this tail coming off of the side, but I couldn't find that one. And then, you know, when you're out on the Eastern Plains, a lot of times you'll just see photographs of storms, and that's not just because you know, storm chasers and storm photographers are only trying to get nothing but the storm in there, but there really isn't anything else to use as foreground or backgrounds in there. So a lot of times when you see storm chasers storm photos that kind of stand out, it's got a tree or a barn or something. Like I was able to find this old homestead that was obviously been abandoned for years, and I was able to snap a few shots of this storm. And really what I find beautiful about these supercell thunderstorms are these striations. The rear flank of the storm, they call it the rear flank downdraft. It comes up from the hail core and it wraps around the backside of the storm, and it kind of wraps out in front of it. So the cold air is coming around it and then pushing down. So you always see these bases, these cloud bases that are kind of slanted from the upper, you know, the upper corner down to the bottom here. They're always kind of slanted. They're always have these striations in it. And I think those are really some of the most amazing shots that I love. And we call these supercell thunderstorms because the supercells are rotating, not just the base of the storm, but the entire storm is rotating. And so it has what we call a mesocyclone in it, and that's why we call them supercell thunderstorms, is when the entire thunderstorm takes on this kind of rotation. So this is one of the things that I get excited about. Like every May and June, like this was May 27th last year, I think Memorial Day. I start to get excited about that, and I'll tell you why, and how you have a good chance to hunt these things. Let me actually pull up. I don't know if I can pull up one of the first tools that I use. So can you guys see that website?
Yep.
Okay. So you know, meteorology is interesting because we can kind of we can kind of keep an eye on the weather coming well in advance. Like these winter storms, we can see them coming for 5 days, 5 or 6 days, and we kind of know what day they're going to come and if they're going to be good or not. With severe weather, it's much different. I think you know, the severe weather that they had out in Alabama and Mississippi lately, that was one of those situations where we could see that there was going to be a bad severe weather situation there 3 days in advance. So that's about the maximum warning, advanced notice that you have that these really big storms are coming. And in Colorado, it's even less time. So very rarely do you get a good 3 days advance notice that there's going to be severe weather. Usually it's 24 to 48 hours, 48 hours if you're really lucky. So one of the tools that I like to use is the Storm Prediction Center. It's just spc.noaa.gov. And if you go to this website, you can you see right here where it says convective outlooks. Mm-hmm. This is what I keep a very close eye on, besides, you know, any of the other geeky forecasting that I do. But they keep a 3-day outlook going here, and you can kind of see like tomorrow they have these. It's on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 being marginal and 5 being high. And for tomorrow, they've kind of highlighted this slight area here in northern Florida. So you kind of know that this storm is going to produce the ingredients to have very photogenic storms, because what creates the great, amazing beauty in the storms is wind shear. So if the winds are increasing with height and turning with height, you get the very amazing storm structure. And that is also happens to be the ingredients that make severe weather, like hail and tornadoes, and strong wind gusts. So these guys keep a very close eye on it at the Storm Prediction Center, and they'll actually put a label out. And I can tell you, anytime that you see on the convective outlook, day 1, 2, or 3, if you see this slight, which is only a level 2 out of 5, but if you see this 2, this slight yellow anywhere in the area of Colorado, then I know that that is something that I definitely want to get ready for and get prepared to photograph something. So the Storm Prediction Center's website is really great, gives you the most advanced heads up that you can get. And anytime you see for Colorado, anything, if it's marginal, slight, moderate, we don't get a lot of highs. I think we get maybe one high convective outlook a year, but if you see a marginal or a slight, which is a 1 and a 2, then you know that you're going to get some really beautiful storms, and you can kind of start to figure out where to get into position for those. And then if you want, I'm always pretty free willing with information. If you go to if you go to my Facebook page, I'm always on there letting people know what my plan is, how I plan to get some really good storms. And let me show you. If you just go to let me see, Facebook, my Facebook page is facebook.com/Reppenhagen9WX, and WX is basically what we call weather in the media. So on here, I post information about when there's a good storm coming, if it's going to be photographic, photogenic, if I'm planning to go out and get it. And a lot of people know that I'm geeked up about this sort of thing, so they'll send me pictures of things that I might be missing, or someone else might see. So I share those on there. It's kind of like a little storm geek area. So if you know when it's coming, you can kind of make a plan how to get where you're going to go, what time you're going to go. And then it's just a matter of getting into position. And these are the kind of things that, we're looking for, is these lowerings. This is, if you're going to see a tornado, it would be right in here. And actually, this one was in Laramie, Wyoming last year. And after maybe about 10 minutes after it crossed this highway and went off into the distance, it did produce a tornado. But these kind of lowerings, I just love them. If I could see one every day, I would definitely do it. And that's the kind of thing I'm photographing. And so back to the app, I'll kind of show you a little bit more about positioning, if that's interesting to you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
I know I get geeked up about these sort of things, but this was actually June 12th, 2017, and that was my first day at 9 News. I had worked at Channel 7 across the other side of Spear Boulevard for a while, and I switched teams here, and this was actually my first day at Channel 7, and it was either a slight or a moderate convective outlook. It was very obvious that there was going to be convective rotating storms, so I knew there was going to be something really beautiful to shoot. And so this was, you can kind of see, this is Highway 85. It's not marked, but you can kind of see Eaton and Alton, Peterson, Nunn right up along here. And so I was kind of positioned myself out in Loveland. That was where I decided to get started on this day, because I knew that these storms would be initiating somewhere, to the north part of our viewing area. And so once this storm literally popped up right along I-25, and it was very low to the ground, and I knew that it was going to be, producing something amazing in the very near future. And so we were kind of, I was actually with one of our other meteorologists, Becky Ditchfield, over at my TV station. And we started following this system as it was developing, and it kind of split into two. And you can kind of see these two pieces. There's this one up here, and then there's this one here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see that, like we're looking for the notch right here. You can kind of see where the reflectivity is a little bit lighter with these greens. This is an area of inflow. And then you can kind of see this kind of hooking down on the bottom. And that's that rear flank downdraft that I was talking about, where the wind comes out, the cold wind comes down out of the top of the thunderstorm and wraps out in front of it. This is the area that you look for rotation. This right inside this little hook area right here. And that's where we were watching, and it actually right in this spot here, there was a really nice lowering that was rotating very rapidly, and we thought it might become a tornado. But then we saw this storm kind of being developed in the outflow of the storm, and you can kind of see it starting to take on that same little structure there, with the inflow coming in and then the air wrapping around here, starting to create a little bit of a hook. And sometimes when you're storm chasing, you kind of have a lot of decisions to make, whether you want to drive through something that doesn't look very beautiful. Some might look a little scary, and sometimes you have to make a decision on which storm you're going to follow, because this storm is obviously going to move quickly off into southeastern Wyoming and southwestern Nebraska and the Panhandle, and this one here. This little white thing right here is kind of where the storm is initiating, and that's going to move just a little bit to the bottom. And so here's me. I'm in this little blue crosshairs here. And so we had to make a decision if we're going to try to get out in front of this storm and stay out in front of there and see what happens with that, or another decision we could make is we could get out in front of this storm, which road network wise made a lot of sense, and that made our decision making a lot easier, because we knew we could get down the highway here to the east of Alt, and once you get out near the Pawnee National Grasslands, there's a road that goes up to the north. So we knew that the way this storm was heading, we could get down this road, let it kind of cross the road, and then meet back up with it on the other side. And so that's what we decided to do. And another thing that made our decision easier, not just because the road network was really easy, but these storms are always competing with each other. And these two were going to definitely compete with sucking in energy. And this one down here looked a little cleaner because this one was getting mostly the outflow from this one, the cold outflow. And this one had nothing but clean, warm, moist air to be taken in here. So we knew this guy was going to blow up. And when we're looking at the app, this is just another minute later. That app that I'm talking about here, you can kind of split the view. This top view here is showing you the reflectivity from the radar. So it's bouncing off of hail. The green and the yellow is lighter rain. And then the magentas and the red and the purples are going to be large hail. And then you can kind of split the view off. And this shows you velocity, which is the wind. And what you're looking for here is little couplets where the colors on here are going to be red and green. The green is moving towards the radar, and this is the Cheyenne radar here. So that means that this really bright green here is air moving towards the radar, and this dark, this red here is moving away from the radar. So you can kind of see a circulation developing here, where the red is coming in, and the green, which would be the rear flank, coming around the side. and that there's going to be rotation in here. So that's what we were
Okay.
watching. And once these red and greens get really close to each other, that means the rotation is getting tighter, and you're going to start to see those really amazing storm structure that we want to photograph, the rotating lowerings. So we knew this storm was, right away. This was at 3:12 in the afternoon. We knew that this was going to get going here pretty quick. And here we are at 4:08. That storm, this is the second storm, the one that's on the bottom, and that had crossed the road like we had hoped, and we were going to come down, and I can't remember what road this is that goes to the north, but we were going to come down here and get on it. I'm not sure, this might be it right here where these storm chasers are. You can see this red polygon around it, meaning there's a tornado warning that's issued on it, and there's a little tornado indicator here that means the radar is picking up on rotation. You can kind of see this notch here, still pretty clear, where there is a whole bunch of light reflections in front of the darker ones, and that's where the air is coming in here. And this is going to be the area to look for the most, the pictures that you want to take are right in here. So that's where we're trying to get into at 4:08 here. I don't know how many shots I have. Okay, yeah. And so that was 4:08. We got on this road, and I think what these storm chasers are on is the one we went on and got up in here. And right as the 5 o'clock news started, this is what we saw in that notch. And this is a time lapse. This is sped up video that I recorded. And you can kind of see that tornado come down, touch down right away, lifted up just a little bit. We were on air on TV at the time, kind of commentating this, and then it sat down, and we were probably a good 2 miles away. This is as tight as my video camera would zoom in on it, and you can kind of see it kind of became a little bit thinner. So it took on a lot of different shapes. You can kind of see the debris, the mostly dust or dirt that's being pulled up here, and it kind of took one of those little classic thin shapes on it. So this was another one where we were live on air. You can kind of see, this is that road that we were talking about. I can't remember what road that is that goes up to the north there in the Pawnee National Grasslands, but it crossed that road, and then it kind of took this roping shape on it. And really, when you're doing still photography, if you're close enough, that rope stage is really some of the most beautiful pictures that you can get. And this is a really sped up video there, and that's kind of the end of it. But that stage there where it's kind of in a rope, I think those are some of the most amazing. When you're photographing a tornado with stills, it can be very kind of unimpressive unless you have a really close range on it, where you can kind of see the detail in the rotation and the different textures and colors. But with when it starts to rope out like this, it really kind of takes on some character to it, and it starts to bend and really takes on some interesting shapes, and sometimes it even breaks up. So that's one of the things that's it's not the absolute goal for a storm photographer to shoot a tornado, because there's so many other different amazing things to photograph with a severe thunderstorm. But I would say the tornado is definitely the ultimate prize. I think it's because they're just so rare. Just a symphony of variables have to come together at just the right time for a severe thunderstorm to produce a tornado, and it's just really special when you get to witness one. So, but like I was saying, it's not like it's not the ultimate goal. I mean, it's not the only thing that you want to photograph with these storms. I mean, this is another thunderstorm that I think I was on last year. The colors can be just amazing, and when you often hear people that are around a thunderstorm that is got a tornado warning on it, and it's possibly producing a tornado. They talk about this green look to the sky. And what that is the hail core. This one is amazing aqua color. This is probably one of the most beautiful hail cores I've ever seen. But the sun is, so this is, so let me get your bearings here, because I always forget that. So this is I-70 here, out near, I want to say Flagler. Yeah, this was out near Flagler. So in I-70, Eastern Colorado, and we're looking back to the west, kind of towards Lyman. So, and this storm is coming from the southwest to the northeast. So it's kind of crossing I-70 at this point near Flagler. And so I got off the interstate here, came over to this dirt service road, and was able to get a pretty clear shot of this just amazing color. And when the sunlight, the sun is to the west here in the evening, and the sunlight is coming into the storm from the back, and the hail core on this thing was so massive, and the sunlight gets filtered through the clouds and through the ice that's in the hail core. And a lot of times you'll get this aqua color or even a green, dark green color. But every once in a while, and I've seen one of these like about once a year, you'll get this beautiful, just teal looking, bluish glow to it. And so that's definitely a huge reward for a long storm chase, that I picked up this storm, out in the Denver area and chased it all the way to Eastern Colorado for several hours. And it took on a lot of different shapes. It even kind of died and recycled at one point, and you could have easily given up on this storm, but I stayed with it. And once it got out near Flagler, it blew back up, and the hail, I mean, the hail just went up into this thing so fast, and the air is just suspending that hail, that I think that just the speed at which it redeveloped with all that hail sitting up here, pretty large hail, and the way the sun was behind it, just illuminating this color. So that was, another one of those rewards where this thing, it may have had a tornado warning on it at some point, but it was never really, it was never, not a storm that was ever going to produce a really magnificent tornado or anything like that. But the persistence on this one definitely paid off with a pretty cool photograph. This one, honestly, I've got some video of this as well, and I tried to do a time lapse. The color was not as good in the video, and this is one of those times where I think the still shot was way better than the video. So I'm really glad that I got an opportunity to take some still photographs of this one. So. Lightning is another thing. I can't tell if there's anyone still here.
Yep.
All right. Yep. So
plenty of us. I think 46 people apparently.
Well, if you're interested still, I mean,
yes, keep going, please.
Another thing I love is lightning, and lightning works both great with video and still photography. I love lightning. It is the one most dangerous thing for storm chasers. Because it's something that you can't see coming. You don't know where it's going to happen, and there's just so much of it that makes it really dangerous. But I kind of developed a technique over the years that keeps me pretty safe from lightning. I've never really had a really close call where I thought I was in trouble. I have I'm a good distance, so I stay in front of it, or to the bottom of the storm, like we were talking about there. And I get in a position where I don't have any rain around me, and so it's clear, and it's usually not quite as windy. So I get out of the truck. First thing I do is set up my video camera and start rolling on the area of the storm, which is most likely to produce the best ground strikes, which is usually in that darker area where the rain is coming out, where the rain and the hail is coming out. And then I set up my little Nikon on a tripod. Obviously, this is one where you have to have a tripod. I mean, even really great low light fast shutter cameras, handheld, are just not going to produce a really good lightning image, at least, you know, not that I've seen. And so you have to really have at least a decent tripod with this one. I throw my camera up on the tripod, get kind of a good focus on anything that I can there, like these clips here. Provided just a really good spot where I could get an autofocus right on these cliffs. Got the autofocus, put it into manual, and started. I have a little intervalometer, so yeah, you can get these things for like $15 on Amazon, and I start clicking. I set it up to click about 200 photos at usually, it depends on the lighting, usually about a second of exposure time, and I start start rattling off these photos. So I know I can get my video camera and my Nikon set up in in less than 10 minutes and have them both start recording lightning shots. And I get back in my truck and I just watch it. I mean, I just watch the lightning, and I know that my video camera is getting it. That's the one thing with the intervalometer. It's going to miss some of them,
Right.
but when you see the really good ones, you're like, oh man, I hope I got that one. And it's so fun to get back in the truck after the storm has kind of moved on you and start looking through to see if it grabbed any of those really good lightning shots. And if it's a prolific lightning producing storm where there's there's 2 flashes per second, you're gonna get some decent shots. And sometimes you'll rattle off 10 or so shots, and if you think you got one, I'd look and see if there's too much overexposure. A lot of times you'll get right where the flash originates here in the cloud, you'll get a lot of really high exposure. But that's one of the things that is with lightning that kind of it's just part of the photograph, really. And this one fortunately had this cloud debris kind of out in front of it where the really bright flash might have been behind that one. So
okay,
this is my favorite lightning strike of all time.
wow.
This is what's really a good lesson in here is that when you're storm chasing and you're driving around on the Eastern Plains, I don't know if you're like me, like my wife and kids just hate driving anywhere with me because I drive slow and I stop a lot, because I'm always making mental notes. You're always scouting, basically. And I came across this rock formation. This is called Jailhouse and Courthouse Rock out in Nebraska. It's kind of near Scotts Bluff a little bit. And I came across these rocks one day, and when I was storm chasing, and there was kind of a decent little storm that day, but it wasn't really producing any lowering or any definition in the clouds or any striations or even really that much lightning. So I saw that storm and I saw these rocks, and I made a mental note, and I told myself, if I'm ever in the area when there is a good storm, I'm going to try to get these in a photograph. And I was chasing a storm. It was one of those days where it wasn't even really that much going on. I think I had a story on the news at Sterling, and I put that in the news at 4 o'clock. And so basically, after I feed my story into the newsroom, my day is done. So from that point on, just happen to have a company truck and a gas card to run around in, which they probably regret giving me. But I was just following a couple of storms up out of the Sterling area up into across the Nebraska state line. and I saw that they were starting to develop and produce a lot of lightning, and they were heading towards that rock formation out there near Scottsbluff. So I had hightailed it, got myself out there in a position where I could get these rocks out, you know, as a foreground, and just waited for the storm to get there. And luckily, I had a good 10 minutes to kind of set, you know, there was like a barbed wire fence kind of running around right in front of me. So I set my tripod as low as it could possibly get, and I got a focus on these rocks. And as the storm started to approach, and you can kind of see this orange glow, it was right at sunset. I mean, it was right at sunset. It couldn't have been a better time. And then you know, the storm started coming in, and we got the orange sunset going, and then the lightning started flashing, and I got in my truck and just started hoping that it would get something. And this is actually one single exposure. This fork lightning. It was just one single 1 second exposure that just happened to grab the right moment, and almost a really kind of I don't know, composition wise, it's kind of appealing with the three forks with the main branch out to the side there. But it's kind of one of those things where I always feel like I'm a scout. I'm always looking for locations, and you can even actually geotag them on your Google Maps app or whatever your map app is you're using. And you know, when you're chasing a storm and you kind of think there was something around, was it a cemetery or was it a rock or something? You can kind of look in that geotag in your area, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That cemetery is not too far from here. And then you go try to get yourself into position. So I always feel like it's really rewarding when you see a possible shot, and then 2 years later it happens, which is it's all about scouting. This was that day, actually, this one right here, and you can kind of see that really bright glow here. You get those a lot. I really don't know how to avoid that, except for having your exposure really low and kind of bring it back out in the edit. I like to use Lightroom just because I mean, I think editing photos is fun, but I don't like to spend a whole lot of time on them. So in Lightroom, I can bring out the contrast on the clouds so that you can kind of see these striations and little features here better with the contrast up, and then you know, lowering the highlights a little bit seems to bring out the lightning a little bit better, and it takes care of some of that overexposure a little bit, I think. But lightning is one of those things where, well, here's you know, obviously video is a different thing, where you kind of let the you know, you're more of just you're more of a passenger, I think, with video, where you set it up, you can set the exposure a lot easier and just wait and watch. And so this is kind of an example of video lightning that I love to get. I could honestly do this all day long, just sit there, watch storms produce lightning. So oh, and here's yeah, it's like when the storm is past, it's not over. We talked about the really beautiful parts of the storm being the base and the inflow, and that those rain-free notches is where you find the real beauty. But a lot of times, once the storm goes past, it's still not. It's you know, the scenery is not over. On the backside of thunderstorms, a lot you get what's called mamatus, and these pillowy type clouds where there's a lot of turbulence and mixing of cold air, and it really creates these soft looking pillows. They're kind of soft, but they're kind of ominous at the same time. So I think modest clouds are really one of the really great treats. That's a lot of times that's why I end up chasing storms by myself, because when I chase with a partner that has to get somewhere at a certain time, or is worried about when I'm out looking at storms, I don't even think about time. I don't think about, oh, I need to get some sleep. Oh, I need to get I need to get home, and so I can get a couple hours of sleep before I have to go to work at 9 o'clock. I don't really think about those things. So when I'll chase a storm out to western Kansas, and then a lot of times what people like to do is just hightail it home 80 miles an hour as fast as you can. But I drive slow, and I stop and I get out and I look to see if there's anything, if there's any structure that's going on with the storm. And a lot of times what you're looking for is either sunset, sunset rays in a storm, or these mammatus structures, which is kind of like the icing or the dessert on the cake with the storms. They're kind of afterwards, and they're really beautiful to photograph, both with video cameras and still cameras as well. So here's some more mammatus here. You can kind of see this is a tight shot underneath the anvil, pretty much looking straight up. It looks tight. This is 55 millimeter, is pretty wide open, but looking straight up at the anvil of this storm, and you can kind of see these pillowy things. And you'll often see these things glowing orange or yellow because, like I said, they're kind of at the end of the storm event when the sun is starting to go down. So you'll see a lot of these mammatus that are lit up in really beautiful colors with the sunset. So, don't know if there's, don't know how much other things I have on here. I didn't really set up a whole lot.
No, this has been great.
But
let me, I haven't seen any more questions come through, but if there are any more questions, you can chat, or I will try to unmute all.
Yeah.
All right. So I've just unmuted people. So if anyone has any questions, anyone?
Oh, did I lose myself?
Oh, no, we're here. Let's see. So Terry says, how can we share a photo on Cory's Facebook page? I can see how to post something, but when I try to share a photo, I lose my. Yeah, it looks like a typo, but the question is, how can we share photos on your Facebook page? Or do we just tag you and then you share it?
Yeah, a lot of times I find that works best. So people tag me, and then I get a notification that there is a photo in there, and so I always get to see it first. And I think you have to be following my page or something instead of just liking it to be able to see what people tag me in. But if I reshare that, then everyone else who that's the storm geek like me gets to see that photograph as well. So, and I love them all. Like I could stare at weather photos all day long. So if anybody has, if you're out and about and you see something that's really cool, I would love to see them for sure. So if you don't mind going to my Facebook page, I kind of lost my, yeah, so here, this is my Facebook page right here.
Okay, you're not sharing your screen anymore. It doesn't look like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I clicked on too many different things. So.
Terry also said, what do you mean by tag? So Terry, in Facebook, if you use an @ sign in front of, let's do like an @ sign, meteorologist Cory Reppenhagen, then that should create a link that he will then see.
Yep, and if I know there's a lot of different ways, like if that doesn't work, You can also message me. So, and that sends a private message where a photo can show up in basically my email inbox. It's a Facebook email. It shows up in there and I can see it. They're a little harder to share from there because what I have to do is basically save the photo and then repost it. But that's another way that you can do it. A lot of people, if you can't figure out how to put something on my timeline or tag me, then that is also another way to do it.
Messaging. Okay. Another question. Do you use shutter priority in shooting storms with your Nikon?
Yeah, so normally, what happens really fast is I do use kind of I put it in full auto at first.
Okay.
When I'm first going out there. And one of the reasons why I've learned to do that is because you have very limited time. And when I'm trying to get something on the news and trying to set up my video camera, a lot of times if I'll have time to get a couple of snaps with my Nikon. And then once, if I have more time, then the first thing I'll do is get basically adjust the shutter where I can set the shutter a little bit, where I want to. So usually I'll put it on like 100 ISO always when I'm, out chasing storms, and I'll have it on auto iris and auto shutter, and I'll adjust it from there. Either, one of the main ways that I adjust the exposure when I'm shooting the storm is just to shutter up is what I normally do.
Okay. Okay. And then there was a question, what model, I'm assuming what model Nikon? I think you said 3300 earlier?
Yeah, I just use a prosumer D3300 with two different lenses, the 55 to I think it's 80, and then 200 millimeter. I think it might be 60 to 200. Okay. So those are the only two that I carry around. So our TV station has decided to get a whole bunch of new Canons because our photographers that shoot interviews are starting to use the Canons a little bit more than our big Sony video cameras, just because they can get that depth of field a little bit tighter with the Nikon or the DSLR cameras. So even last year was the first time where I got to grab one of those as well. So I feel like the lens is a little bit better on that one, and I feel like that everything kind of looks a little bit better when I'm shooting with that one. But for the most part, my little prosumer Nikon D3300 has been great for me. So it's been awesome.
Great. Another question, what is traffic etiquette for storm chasers?
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting thing. The etiquette is kind of two ways with between ourselves and with the rest of the traveling public. So on days in May, usually when there's a lot of storm chasers out and about, we call them chasecationers, where they'll spend their 2 to 3 weeks vacation for the whole year in May, and they'll come from Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas, and they'll basically be on every storm for a 3 to 4 week period. So in May, the chaser traffic gets very heavy. But for the most part, it's pretty self-governed, where that they're very courteous to each other. There's very few incidences where you're going to, you know, having storm chasers try to run over each other and pass each other. There have been, for me, it's a little different because I have a marked vehicle. You know, I'm flying I'm flying these Peacocks back here with the 9 on them, and so I'm always pretty much just driving the speed limit, and not passing anybody. If I come up on a, you know, on an RV and it's going 40 miles an hour down a 2-lane road, I just pretty much stay behind it and wait my turn. But a lot of times in May, you'll get a lot of chasers out there that you know, they don't want to be caught out of position, and they don't want to let anything stand in their way of getting their photographs. So you'll see people passing each other on 2-lane roads. You'll see people passing in hail, but
Wow.
I think for the most part, Colorado is a really good place to storm chase.
Mm-hmm.
One is because we have a really good road network. It's the Eastern Plains for the most part. There's a few areas that you can get into the woods, but for the most part, it's on a grid, and there's every road is going to lead somewhere. And in other areas, it's not like that. Like chasing in Oklahoma and Arkansas is just an absolute nightmare because every road seems to be a dead end, and you get yourselves in situations where you just get stuck. So and Colorado is kind of known for storm chasers, and plus we get the really beautiful storms because our storms are a little bit higher based, so they're a little bit more visible. In other states, they can kind of be down really low to the ground, and but our state, they're a little bit higher. There's a lot less trees, so you've always got really good visibility, and our storms are a little bit drier. So our supercells, that's my daughter yelling around back there. You might.
I figured.
Oh, she says she got a mosquito bite.
Oh
I
no.
don't know about that. Are you sure, Sid? It's definitely mosquito bite. But yeah, I mean, our storms, when I was talking about the supercells where the entire storms are rotating, if you go further south, like Texas and Oklahoma, their storms have a lot more precipitation, and we call them high precipitation or HP supercells. And up here in Colorado and Wyoming and Nebraska and the Dakotas, we have what's called LP supercells, or low precipitation supercells, where almost the entire rotating cloud structure is visible. So a lot of those storm chasers from Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas will make a point to come up here any chance that they can to get the really photographic storms. And they're a little less dangerous because you can see them. So if you can see a storm, then I feel comfortable. You know, if you can see a storm, you have a visual on it and you know where it's going, where it's headed, then I always feel safe with the storms. And that's always, in Colorado, we have that, and other states, I've chased storms in Arkansas and Mississippi before, and it's just the worst because the storms are really late, and it's usually getting dark, and the trees are everywhere, and you can't see the cloud bases, and you can get disoriented. But when you have really good visibility out here, it's also, I feel like, a lot better. It's a lot safer.
Interesting. Cool. All right, we've got 3 more questions. Are you up for those?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. So Lori has a question. Have you had any close calls?
So I've had some close calls with wind mostly. So some of the wind that comes out of the thunderstorms are straight line winds that can be in the 75 to 80 mile per hour range. And if your vehicle's moving when that happens, it can be very hairy, and that's probably where I've got myself into the greatest close call situations. But you know, a lot of times when that rear flank comes out of the storm, I'm already kind of in position, and I can kind of brace myself for those. So I've never had a close call with a tornado, mainly because I don't really need to get that close, because when I'm photographing tornadoes, I like to see the entire structure of the base and every little bit of rotation that's in the wall cloud. I think you know, for some of the smaller tornadoes, I do like to get a little bit closer, but I don't think I've ever had a close call where, you know, I was wondering what was going to happen. I think one of I've had a lot of close calls with hurricanes. You know, I worked in Florida for 10 years, and I've covered 23 hurricanes. I was at ground zero for 23 hurricanes. Starting back in my first one was Charlie back in August of 2004. So I've gotten into some situations where some flooding got a little scary. I think the scariest situation I've ever had storm chasing supercell thunderstorms was in Kansas one day, where you'll get storms that kind of are training. So there's some sort of a boundary that is producing storm after storm after storm, and just keep kind of coming in the same area. And one time I was photographing a storm out in Kansas, and just kind of lost track of what was going on, and got ran over by another storm that was pretty powerful, coming from, you know, just the same path that the storm that I was photographing took. But I was kind of so mesmerized with
you didn't look behind you.
I just kind of lost track of, you know, I wasn't looking at my radar apps. I wasn't looking behind me. I was basically a deer caught in headlights, and I got run over by a pretty good storm. Fortunately, there was not a tornado or anything too bad in it, just some really big hail.
So that's the next question. How often is your vehicle in the shop fixing hail damage?
Yeah, so hail is, I try to avoid it. When I first got to 9 News, they got this brand new truck, and that was like the worst thing to me. I just didn't want to be in a new vehicle, and I just asked if there's any way, you know, can I get an old kind of beater truck, you know, that I don't have to worry about so much. And so I do make an effort to try to stay out of the hail, but when you're getting into position to photograph the base of a storm, which is kind of where the hail is coming out of, I kind of mentioned that rear flank, that can carry hail out of the hail core, you know, a good miles, and it's not only has the velocity that it does when it's coming down, but then you add a sideways velocity into it as well. So I've got quite a few marks on the 9 News weather truck. I think last year I took a couple of baseball size hits.
Wow.
Up in the Laramie area chasing a storm. And it was one of those things where there was only one escape route. There was only one road to get out of the way, and it was Interstate 80. And I got basically caught in a group of trucks and RVs that didn't, you know, if you're not paying attention to the storm and watching it on your radar, and knowing where it's going and where it's coming from, it can be very disorienting when the big hail starts hitting you. And so a lot of times what people do is just stop, because you know, at least that limits the damage capability to your vehicle if you're stopped. But they didn't realize that if you just kept going straight, you could easily escape this hail, but everyone stopped.
Got it. Right.
So there was nothing I could do there. So I ended up taking quite a bit of hail damage on that one. I can actually name 5 storms where I've taken larger than golf ball size hail. And those 5 storms, and I actually have never had the Titan. I think we got that thing in 2017. I've never had that into the shop for repairs, and they keep asking me if I want to do that, and I just I don't see any sense because I'm just and I actually talked to our marketing people, and what I want to do is kind of memorialize the dents with kind of like a little sticker.
Yeah, yeah, that
You
makes
know,
sense.
date and location. Not that I'm trying to encourage anybody to get in a hail, but they're there. So
Okay, so one more question. How well does GPS function on the far eastern plains as well as during strong storms?
yeah, not good. So
Okay, good to know.
yeah, you can definitely. One thing you can do if you know the area that you're going to get into. I try to memorize every road, every single little dirt road, because I always like to have escape routes, and I always like to plan 2 steps ahead. So when I'm planning a storm that's kind of moving usually from the southwest to the northeast, I'm stair stepping. So a lot of
Uh-huh.
times, you'll find a road that goes to the east and another one to the north, another one east, north, east, north. And I always like to have at least 2 steps where I can have a plan, to where I can get out and stay in front of this and stay, have a good visual on it. But a lot of times the cell is even so bad that you can't, that even the Google Maps is not working, which is one of the most basic and easiest apps for a phone to run in limited service.
Hmm.
So you can actually download it. You can actually download map to work offline,
Yep.
so that I've done that a few times when I know that I'm, I think probably maybe a handful, 4 or 5 times a year, I'll be chasing in Nebraska, where I don't know the roads as well, and I have done that, and it actually does help. You don't have your
Okay.
GPS icon on there
Uh-huh.
sometimes, but you can keep at least with road names and signs, you can kind of keep your bearings a little bit, but fortunately, Western Kansas and Colorado, and even parts of southern Wyoming, I know so well that I don't need the maps anymore.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that is a big thing. Cell service out there. A lot of storm chasers have several different services. So um, they'll have a Verizon phone and an AT&T phone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that they can kind of take one thing that I've been trying to talk Channel 9 into doing, which I did do when I was at Channel 7. There is a company that a cellular company out that operates on the Eastern Plains. It's called Viero. And I used to have a little Viero hockey puck, one of those MiFi networks that works great. I mean, this is an amazing thing. If you really do spend time on the eastern plains of Colorado and even western Kansas and parts of the Nebraska Panhandle, this works amazing. It's called Viero, and they have towers out there where Verizon and AT&T and Sprint and T-Mobile just won't go, and
Okay.
so it's amazing. You have this. It's like a little hockey puck that you put on your dash there, and you connect your the phone that you have to it through the personal hotspot and just through the Wi-Fi,
Okay.
and it's amazing. I I've been trying for a couple years to get Channel 9 to get me one of those, but so far, no dice.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for the questions. Lots of thank yous. Make sure you thank your daughter for letting us have so much time with you.
I will.
And lots of appreciation for a really great presentation. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to us and being flexible and doing this online. I think it worked really well. So thanks a lot.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for having me over. I'm not, I'm a storm chaser, and I don't really know a whole lot of details about great photography. I think for me, it's just getting into the moments. If that's half of the battle. If you
Yeah,
can, for a nature and landscape and weather photographer, the half of the battle is just to get to the location and that right timing, find the right timing with either the lighting or with the stage of a thunderstorm. So I like to get myself into this position, and then I just go bonkers, trying to best capture it the best I can with all the video and all the still devices that I have. So
absolutely. Well, that right there is good information. So if we have more than one camera, bring them all out.
yeah, no, I make full use of a little lipstick dash cam, a GoPro, video camera, my DSLR, my cell phone. I'll make use of it all. I'm just, it's I am bonkers when there's a storm.
Well, great. Okay, so now I just have to figure out how to get us out of here.
Yeah,
So feel
this.
free to leave the meeting yourself if I can't figure out how to turn everything off.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
thanks everyone.
yeah. Hopefully you don't have to do your meetings like this for too long, but
Not for too long.
at least we know how to do it now.
Exactly.